Welcome everyone to another episode of Tips from My Garage. My name is Lisiate Tonga. I'm the father of two boys, husband to a beautiful wife, owner of online consulting business Upgrade Version U.0, and author of ebook Q&A Between Two Addicts. And today I want to talk to you all about doing it until. And what I mean by that is doing something until it's finished, doing it until the end, doing it until you get the results that you want, or doing it as long as is necessary. So just do it until. And the question I want to pose to you is, have you ever tried to change but threw the towel in too soon? So let's say had a you have a drinking problem, or you're a smoking problem, or maybe even an eating habit that you want to change and get better at doing, and you find a program and you know that it works because it has proven evidence that it does work. You've seen testimonials. So you know the product works and you know that it's good, but when you do it, you somehow think that you might be different, or this might not be built for you. You try to do the best that you can at it and it doesn't work, or at least you don't think it works for you. And so I think many of us get into a situation where we think that we want to try something new and have tried to do it and it hasn't worked. And so we stop doing that thing. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. And what happens is when we try something new and it doesn't work, then we quit. And a lot of us are quitting too early. And so what what happens, or why do you and me quit too early when we try to change, especially if it's something that's for our benefit, that we stop too early? And so here are a few reasons that I've come up with, and perhaps you can come up with some reasons of your own, and perhaps you have your own, but maybe these are some common reasons. The first one I come up with is that we're too impatient, and we want our results now. And so we want to change from this way to this way, but we want to do it in the least painful way possible and in the quickest way possible. And so I think we fall in love with the idea of us changing, but when it comes down to it, we just aren't patient enough with a proven system to give it the time it needs to be able to work. So we're too impatient and we want the results now. And when we don't get it, we quit early. Another reason is that we think it's too hard. And trying out new things is hard. And a lot of it is hard because we're perhaps trying something that we've never tried before. It's something new. It's outside of our realm. It's outside of what we're used to, and so it can be difficult that way. But perhaps it is that we just haven't given it enough time, as we've given other things that we become good at, that we've given a lot of time to, if that makes sense. And so we think that things are too hard, or it gets too hard for us, and so we stop. And the third reason I come up with is that us as human beings, we don't like change. We're so used to the norm, and our norm is where we're at now, and we're very comfortable where we're at now. And change means being somebody different. And when you're trying to be somebody different or change some things about us, we have this internal battle in our mind about our identity. Like, if we change this part about me, then I'm not going to be who I truly am. I'm going to be somebody else. Or we're trying to change something bad about ourselves to become good. that changes our identity. And so we don't like that. We just would rather stay consistent or congruent with our image because that's our identity, that's how we're known. And so change is difficult for us, and especially if it's hard, and especially if it's not coming to us straight away. So these are just a few reasons that I've come up with for why people or why we quit too soon, and maybe some of those you can identify with. And so what ends up being the cost of returning to our default patterns? The cost of returning to our default patterns, firstly, is that we don't change. So if we don't change, we stay where we are. Okay, same habits, same lifestyle, same routines, same friends, same environments that we put ourselves in. There's nothing about it that changes. Well, the other thing that it costs us is our sanity, because we are staying still, we're not changing. We still have this expectation of us that somehow we're going to change, even in our current circumstances. And is that not the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result? And so there is some degree of dysfunction in that way of thinking. And I guess that's why they call it insanity, is because you're doing something that doesn't really sound rational. Like, if you're doing the same thing and expecting it to be different, and nothing changes, but you still do it, that is a bit weird. That is a bit dysfunctional thinking. And the other thing that I come up with is that you're just going to continue down the wrong path. And so when you continue down the wrong path, then all you're going to do is reap the consequences of your current behaviors. And so it's like walking down that same path downhill until it gets quick enough that it turns into a downward spiral. And then wherever that ends up is the consequence that you're going to have to pay for it. That is the fact of it. If you're on a downward trajectory and you don't change anything about it, you can't expect anything different to happen, any kind of intervention to come out, and unless something dramatic or traumatic happens, you can't expect anything to change about that. And so you're going to reap what you sow at the end of the day. There are a couple of questions that I want you to ask yourself that are going to help to give you some perspective. And the first question is, how long have you had the problem for, or how long has the problem actually existed? And the second question is why can't short trials undo long damage? Okay, why can't short trials undo long damage? And so let's talk about that first question, um, to help us give us some perspective. So, how long has a problem actually existed? So, if you have a drinking problem, a smoking problem, a sex problem, a porn problem, an eating problem, whatever kind of a issue is it that you had, how long have you had it? Has it been 6 months, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years? How long has it been? If I give you an example, so for me, I started acting out at a really young age. I started acting out when I was 10 years old, 10, 11 years old. And then when I turned 15, that's when I introduced other vices, or that's when other vices were introduced into my life. And then all of those things started to catch fire and then snowball into bigger problems. But if you look at it from 10 years old until, let's say, I was 35 years old, when I decided, hey, I don't think that this is right for me. I need to change some things about myself, or else I'm going to be in danger of who knows what the consequence will be if I didn't change. That's from 10 years old to 35 is 25 years of acting out. So would you call that a long period of time? I would call that a long period of time. 25 years, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, those to me are still long periods of time. But when if we've had habits or vices that we've been doing for a substantial amount of time, and then we try to change them, we find a proven method that can change something, but we only give it like a month or 2 months, and then we say, this doesn't work. And so a wise woman once told me, and put it in a way for me to understand it this way. She said, you have to give something that works as much time as you have given what's not worked. Meaning, like if we put it into this context, if you had a smoking problem and you had a smoking problem for 10 years, then you shouldn't you at least give yourself 10 years to try out this new method that could possibly help you to get rid of smoking? Basically saying, like, you've got to give it enough time. You've got to be more patient with yourself. You've got to you've got to you have to give that thing space and time to grow into itself and for you to change with it. And if you need to give it 5 years to change, for example, and it takes 5 years for you to change, and you do eventually change the habit, would that have been worth it if what you had been doing was for 10 years? I would say that's a net positive. And so if let's say it didn't take you 2 months, but it took you 6 months or a year or even 2 years, still that is substantially less time than what you have given what's not worked, or however long it has been that you've been smoking. I hope that actually makes sense to you. The other question is, why can't short trials undo long damage? So first of all, the fixes that you're going to have to make, first of all, there are internal fixes, right? You have to do some rewiring. That's going to be like rewiring in your brain, rewiring in your routines, rewiring in your habits, your behaviors. Those things are going to take time to do, because the habits that you have have put grooves, deep grooves into your brain, because they've been done over and over and over again for years and years and years and years. And for you, you can't change the fact that you have those deep grooves in your brain, but what you can do is you can redirect your brain to create new pathways, so you make new behaviors, and that then can become, once you have done it over and over and over and over again, the habit that you go to. You've got to give that enough time to be to play itself out, to be worked on. Creating new grooves and new pathways in your brain is not going to be done in 1 month or 2 months. It's going to take repetition and time. And time also reveals a lot of things. Recovery has different stages, so you can go like 1 year or 6 months, and once the novelty wears off, then there's that next 6 months that you have to deal with, and that comes with a whole nother set of feelings and emotions and things that you have to deal with. And then you got 5 years, and then 10 years, and then if you have kids, you get married, you got business and all these other things that happen all at once. you know Recovery goes through different phases as well. And the other thing about the short trials, why you can't fix long-term damage in short periods of time, is that it's complicated. And I guess you've got the internal side of it that you got to sort out. So your mentality, your habits, your vices, your routines, behaviors, all of that. But you also have your environment that you have to deal with. That's the places that you go. That's the places that you hang out. Then you got your circle of influence. And your circle of influence are all the people and the networks that you have connections with. And they are your identity. That's part of who you are. And so if things need to change there, that's not an easy change to make. But all those things have to be dealt with, but that's complicated, because then you have to, if you have to get rid of this, stop going to these places and stop hanging out with these people, then where are you going to hang out? What are you going to do? Where are you going to be? Where can you be? And so that's another set of complex issues that you have to deal with. And so you've got the internal things, you got the external things, but then also, and lastly, is that most things that you're gonna have to deal with, the issues are gonna get resolved by are gonna require some kind of physical, mental, and spiritual habits or routines to be able to help you to resolve these um, all of these areas, internal, external. So if you have to build up new habits in all these areas, that's not easy to do either. And so you can't do that in just a few short months. This isn't Ozempic. If you want to make real meaningful change in your life, one that's going to be sustained through the remainder of your life, then that's going to require work. It's going to be a bit more difficult and more challenging than popping a pill that's just going to shred you, and you don't have to do anything for it. And so, what happens when we say to ourselves that when we stop early or we quit too soon, is we say that doesn't work. And what happens when we tell ourselves that that doesn't work is that we're quitters. And what it does is it reinforces our old identity. We start saying to ourselves that we're failures, we're quitters, we can't change. It's too hard. I can't do hard things. It's just how I am. It's just how I was built. I'm a bad person, and I can't change that thing about me. And so that's what happens when we tell ourselves that we can't do something. When we quit early on ourselves, it just reinforces our old patterns and our old identity, and behaviors. And what happens when we quit too early is we go to the our vice of choice to help us to feel good about the decision that we've made, and that also then obviously would reinforce our identities. And so how long should you do something for? Well, you should do something until. Do it until. Commitment to a higher living is for life. There's no time frame on that. You can't just say to yourself, I'm committed to living a higher standard or a higher way of living, but I only want to do that for the next 6 months. You can't do that. Commitment to higher living is a commitment for life. This is something you strive every single day to do, to become. One thing we have to remember is that progress is measured by consistency, and not by speed. We shouldn't be trying to lose 10 kilos in the next 2 months. We should be just trying to change our habits and our lifestyle daily that is sustainable, that we can do for the rest of our lives, that as a byproduct of living our lives a new way, that we achieve those goals anyway. I mean, unless you're trying to cut 10 kilos in 2 months or a month for bodybuilding or for some kind of a project or whatever. But for longevity, you can't do that for longevity. You have to. It's only sustainable by changing daily habits simply and realistically, so that you do these things on a day by day basis until that change happens, and those things will take time, and who knows how long that's going to take. Each one of us heals differently. Each one of us is going to be different. Like, I can do some things better than you can, and you can do some things better than I can. And so what we shouldn't be doing is we shouldn't be running around comparing ourselves to everyone else. Oh, look at this person, they're doing so much better than I am. Oh, look at that person, they've done so much better. They've got this and they've got that. Stop doing that. Stop comparing yourself to other people, and especially those that are just trying to improve as well. You believe it or not, you can actually do things better than other people. And yes, people will be able to do things better than you can, but that's neither here nor there. That's none of your business. It's none of my business. I'll just try and focus on me trying to get better, at on a day by day basis. And if I'm better than I was the next day, then that's good. That's has to be good enough for me. I don't know what the next person is doing or how they're doing. If they're going, at the speed of light, good for them. But I don't sit here and I compare myself to that. Because the reason I don't do that, and the reason you shouldn't do that, is because it'll be discouraging. And when and discouragement will be disheartening, and then it will prevent you or stop you, stunt your growth. It will stop you from doing what you're doing because you're so focused on the wrong thing. So don't do that. And I guess the last thing that I want to leave you with is this. Have some compassion on yourself. Like, give yourself some grace. Don't set expectations so high that if you fall short, the discouragement is too great that you go back to your old ways. And that was the last thing I wrote, and I just wanted to say that out loud. I wanted to read that because I didn't want to mess it up. But you know, be good to yourself. Don't beat yourself up too hard. Have compassion. Have grace on yourself. How long have you had the thing for? Has it been 10 years? And what month is this for you? Would it be 2 months, 6 months? And then you made a mistake and then you start feeling bad? Don't do that. Acknowledge that things happen, you make mistakes, but have some grace, have some compassion on yourself, but be able to pick yourself up and move forward. Because if you get yourself in a situation where you become so discouraged because you've got such high expectations for yourself, what will happen is that will start to weigh you down, and put you in a bad place. And when you get into that kind of space or in that kind of mentality, only bad things happen when you think the worst of yourself. you know be good to yourself, be kind to yourself, give yourself space. Things take time, and you're doing things at your speed. And if you're facing in the right direction, then you're heading in the right direction. If all you can do is look in the direction that you're supposed to go, for some people that's going to be good enough. And if that's you, then let that be good enough, and feel good about that, and then use that as momentum to move on to the next thing. Stop dwelling on the past, just move forward. Anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time. If you like this video, like, comment, share, follow, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Upgrade Version U.0, for more content like this.